Let me start with something many people do not realize until life brings them to a quiet moment, sometimes years later. The things are not always the dramatic events we remember. Sometimes the real breaking happens in the silent places inside us, the places where we hide the emotions we never dared to face. Most people grow up believing that strength is the ability to stay composed, to smile even when the heart is heavy, to say, "I am all right," when everything inside whispers otherwise. But that kind of strength is an illusion. A mask we learn to wear so well that after a while we forget that it is not our real face. The emotions we push away do not dissolve. They do not evaporate. They cling to us. They settle into the corners of our minds like dust gathering in a forgotten room. At first we do not notice the weight, but with time the dust becomes layers, and the layers become heaviness. And that heaviness begins to shape how we think, how we move through the world, and even how our bodies respond to life. Here is the twist many people never see coming. The very emotions we bury for the sake of surviving a moment become the emotions that drain our strength long after the moment is gone. The mistake is not that we feel too much. The mistake is that we convince ourselves we must feel nothing at all. But why do we do this? Why do we learn to silence our own emotional truth? From the earliest moments of our lives, the world teaches us a subtle but powerful lesson. Certain emotions are welcomed. Others are treated as flaws. A child who laughs is embraced. A child who cries is told to toughen up. A child who feels anger is scolded. A child who expresses fear is teased. Slowly we are shaped. We learn that emotions come with consequences. Somewhere in the midst of all that learning, the brain forms shortcuts. This emotion is acceptable, that emotion is dangerous. And without meaning to, we begin to hide the parts of ourselves the world told us were inconvenient by adulthood. Many people have become experts at repression. They do not recognize it as repression. To them, it is simply how they function. They tell themselves they are the strong one, the one who keeps going, the one who holds everything together. But the price of that performance is rarely obvious until the cracks begin to appear. Modern psychology reveals a truth that is both striking and unsettling. Emotions that are ignored do not fade away. They reappear in forms we barely recognize. The anger we never expressed reemerges as irritability, tension, and short tempers. The sadness we swallowed turns into numbness, fatigue, or a persistent emptiness. The fear we denied reshapes itself into over-control, perfectionism, or a constant sense of being on edge. The body remembers everything. It keeps a record even when the mind tries to forget. Think about your own life. How many times have you brushed aside your feelings, only to find yourself exhausted days later for reasons you cannot explain? How often have you snapped at someone over something trivial, and afterward wondered, where did that come from? How many times have you felt drained, discouraged, or strangely restless even when nothing obvious was wrong? That is not weakness. That is not you being dramatic. That is repressed emotion trying to surface in the only ways it can. Here is the question that becomes impossible to ignore. If repression weakens us, then what does real strength look like? Real strength is not the absence of emotion. Real strength is the willingness to turn toward what we feel with honesty instead of burying it out of habit. True strength is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is quiet, courageous, and deeply human. It is the decision to feel something today so that it does not haunt us tomorrow. There is a psychological idea, often referred to as the return of the repressed. It describes how everything we try to silence returns eventually, slipping into dreams, subtle behaviors, or sudden waves of emotion. You can imagine it like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. For a while, you may succeed, but the harder you push down, the stronger the force becomes. When it finally breaks the surface, it comes up with power. This is what happens inside the human heart, when emotions are locked away, but there is something even more revealing. Neuroscientific studies show that when we suppress emotions, the part of the brain responsible for logical regulation works overtime while the emotional center remains fully activated. In other words, even when we pretend not to feel something, the body experiences the stress as if the emotion were happening fully and openly. Suppression drains us. It pulls energy quietly from the background of our lives. This is why so many people walk around feeling worn out without understanding why. Emotional suppression is like a program running silently on a device, consuming resources even when it is invisible. And yet, repression is not only an internal experience, it reshapes how we relate to the world around us. People who repress anger often struggle to communicate boundaries. They become the ones who say yes when they want to say no, who absorb resentment until it spills out in unexpected ways. People who repress sadness often struggle to form deep connections because genuine connection requires vulnerability. People who repress fear may try to control everything around them, not because they are demanding, but because deep down they are terrified of uncertainty. These buried emotions leak into decisions, reactions, relationships, and life paths without us ever realizing it. If repression is so destructive, why do we keep doing it? Because repression feels safe. It gives us the illusion of control. It helps us avoid the possibility of being judged or misunderstood. It shields us from facing truths that may challenge our identity. Repression is not chosen because it is wise. It is chosen because it is familiar. But familiarity is not freedom. What would happen if you stopped running from the emotions you locked away years ago? Would they break you? Or would they finally release you? When people begin confronting emotions they have avoided, the first sensation is often discomfort. Tears may rise unexpectedly. Old anger may stir. Fatigue may wash over the body. Some people panic and think, "This is why I never let myself feel." It is too much. But that first wave is not destruction. It is release. It is the pressure finally finding an exit. If you stay present, something powerful begins to happen. The storm settles. Slowly, clarity emerges. You begin to understand what those emotions were trying to communicate all along. You begin to see that they were not your enemy. They were your messengers, waiting patiently for the moment you would finally listen. Here is the fascinating part. When emotions are felt fully, even for a short time, they naturally lose intensity. Most emotions have a biological duration measured in minutes. It is repression that stretches them into years. When you feel an emotion, its grip loosens. When you avoid an emotion, its grip tightens. What appears as weakness in the moment, the tears, the trembling voice, the honest admission, is actually the beginning of resilience. It is the path toward a strength that does not crumble. Opening yourself emotionally also transforms how you connect with others. Vulnerability, far from being a flaw, creates trust. When you show someone your authentic self, not the polished version, not the pretend strength, but the real you, you invite them to show their real selves too. Relationships deepen. Barriers dissolve. The world feels less lonely. Perhaps this is why so many people today feel disconnected. We have become masters at appearing fine, but behind closed doors, many hearts are quietly aching. It takes only one honest voice to break that pattern. When one person speaks truth, others feel permission to do the same. So how do we begin this journey of turning inward with compassion? The first step is awareness. Sit with yourself for a moment and ask, what am I truly feeling beneath everything I show the world? Then resist the urge to judge the answer. Anger does not make you dangerous. Sadness does not make you weak. Fear does not make you flawed. These emotions make you human. The second step is expression, not explosion. You do not need to pour everything out at once. Small, consistent acts are enough. Write your uncensored thoughts in a journal. Speak to a trusted friend. Take a quiet moment to observe your feelings without pushing them away. Pause when your body tightens and ask, what emotion is this trying to tell me? These simple practices, repeated over time, literally alter the brain. The pathways that once fueled suppression begin to weaken. The pathways of regulation and emotional understanding grow stronger. You begin to live with honesty rather than avoidance, and over time, you will notice something unexpected. You become more alive. Because when you shut out sadness, you also shut out joy. When you bury fear, you also bury wonder. When you silence anger, you silence passion. Repression protects you from pain, yes, but it also protects you from life. So here is the question only you can answer. Do you want safety, or do you want aliveness? Because you cannot have both. Every meaningful connection, every moment of growth, every deep experience in life requires vulnerability. It requires feeling. It requires courage. The world does not need more people who are good at pretending. The world needs people who are willing to feel, to heal, and to live fully. You found value in this message. Make sure to like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more deep conversations that help you grow.